to actually get into a administrative or a function that they're able to not, don't have to wear their uniform, don't have to carry all the equipment, but they can still provide a function. So back in May, we developed this, and what it's specifically addressed for pregnant nursing women is that 6 months in advance of delivery, they can come in and request a temporary restricted duty position. So that allows them to get in a temporary restricted duty position. That policy also allowed post-delivery 12 months of restricted duty, because we know a lot of times some of the recommendations for nursing is 12 months following delivery. So it's something that it can be extended based on needs, and even the 6 months in advance based on medical needs of the mother can be extended. Working and in addition, working with the union, we identified a way that really needed to be streamlined. Back in December, we actually determined that there was a way that for pregnant or nursing women to get into the temporary restricted duty policy needed to be streamlined, that allowed them to, all they have to do now, rather than going through a process that could take a couple of days to get them into the temporary restricted duty position. Once they let an official know, they'll immediately be placed into a restricted duty position. No questions asked. There's no need for a follow-up fitness for duty. They get put into the position. We try to make it as easy as possible and streamlined as possible. And I gotta say, it was a good coordination between the union and us. They brought a concern to our attention. We addressed it within 24 hours. We had a policy change, and we had it addressed, so it was much more streamlined and much more beneficial, I think, to the working mothers that we value.
Well, I think this is an area where we're seeing across the nation. It's just time to make sure that we're addressing it. And if there's the opportunity for a reasonable accommodation, by all means, thank you for leading and making that happen, because it's not happening everywhere, and there are some pretty big consequences. And considering women are a significant, actually now we're the most, right, in the workplace. I think there's more women in the workforce today than there are men, and I just think it's an issue that we should be past, actually. So I appreciate you staying on that. Another question that I have, checking my time. I'm a co-sponsor of the Threat Assessment Prevention and Safety Act, which would require Capitol Police to have a representative on the newly established DHS Joint Behavioral Threat Assessment and Management Task Force. Those are hard for me. I know you guys deal in acronyms and long titles, so it's nothing for you. But in the absence of such a task force, what are USCP's capabilities in this area currently, and does the U.S. Capitol Police work with other federal law enforcement agencies in sharing various intelligence and threat assessments today?
Thank you very much for the question, and I applaud your support in sponsoring a bill such as that. I would like to comfort you in saying that the Capitol Police actually had one of the first threat assessment sections in a law enforcement agency in the country. We started in 1986. We've been developing it ever since. We work extremely closely with Secret Service, FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, DHS. We have people up at the National Operations Center, and we work very closely with coordinating and sharing some of the information and intelligence that we have specific to some of the threat assessments. We have clinical psychologists on staff that we can turn to help us with our threat assessments. Probably some of the best in the country, one of the best in the country when it comes to that. So it is something that I think we're well suited for something much like what you're talking about. I think we're already involved in things very similar to what your bill sponsors in our work. But again, I think our involvement with the various task force has proven to be very beneficial to our department in mitigating a lot of these threats, arresting and prosecuting a lot of these threats, to include concerns for cyber and being involved in some of the cyber task force. So thank you very much. I appreciate your involvement in that.
Go back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I appreciate you being here, and let me add my voice to everyone else's of saying thank you, Chief, and thanks to everyone for everything that we expect of you and ask of you to do. You're being constantly vigilant on our behalf, and we owe you a debt of gratitude, so thank you for all of that service. So I come from a rural area as well, and remote, I guess, not as remote as Hawaii sometimes, I suppose, but some similar challenges and issues in rural areas. And we just had a staff retreat recently where we spent some time talking about you know, my staff will have district office hours. We'll go out into different communities. And so one person will be at one place and constituents will come in. We actually spend a lot of time, should that person, if they have a concealed carry permit, should they have a gun with them? You know, what should we do? How do we make sure they're safe? What kind of things can we do to make sure their comfort level is increased? We have great relationships with our local police departments, sheriff's offices, even the Washington State Patrol, and work with them a lot. But just any ideas or suggestions, thoughts that you guys could share with all members on how to make sure district staff is as safe as possible?
Thank you very much for the question. That's something actually we do already on a fairly regular basis. We know a lot of people have various districts, like you said, in fairly rural, some are in urban areas. Different areas provide different requirements for safety and security. A couple of things that we can do. You've got a great relationship with your local law enforcement. That's probably first and foremost. It's great to have. You always want to have your point of contact. The other thing is we, working with the Sergeant at Arms, have developed a program where we can come out and do security awareness briefings. A lot of times now, you know, as a efficiency, we're doing them now by video teleconference, which is pretty effective. And we can talk to your staff about, you know, how to handle personal security, how to determine what security is necessary within an area. Newly people that get new member orientation when they come here, we talk to them about, you know, city, you know, Washington, D.C., safe area, but, you know, what different things you want to be aware of. So we can provide these security awareness briefings to your staff. We can talk to them about things that they may need to know as they go out into these areas to provide, you know, communications with your constituents. But that's a great program. The security awareness briefing program coordinated with the Sergeant at Arms super program. I think that's a good thing to follow up on.
Do you talk about concealed carry and pluses or minuses about that?
That would be something that we'd probably really refer back to the local, because concealed carry permits and the laws regarding concealed carry are so location specific that we'd probably bring in one of the local law enforcement to assist in our security awareness briefing and have them probably address the concerns with concealed carry, the pros and cons.
You know, I've got great constituents, but certainly a lot of Second Amendment folks, and a lot of people do carry. And so it's just something that we need to be smart on and be aware of. So.
A lot of times we find awareness of what is going on in the area is probably the biggest thing to know. It just helps you, as long as you're aware, you know what to expect, and it just helps with your safety and security.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and this, we're always looking for ways to improve. Recently there was an airspace incident at the Capitol. And I don't know if anybody else wants to ask about this that may know more about it than I was not in town at the time, but I just wanted to bring it up and give you an opportunity to explain to us and tell us, you know, lessons learned, things that maybe have changed since that incident to help improve the communication between all the people that are working in all these buildings, so that everybody feels as aware and as safe as possible.
Thank you very much for the question. November 26th. That's a day I'll remember for a long time.
Yeah.
I was actually here. Many of us were here up in the command center. It was a little bit of an anomaly. You know, we work a lot with our federal partners and support partners in getting information in. We are very cognizant of what's going on in our air security in the area. It plays a big role in our safety and security here on Capitol Hill. So it is a big portion of our security portfolio. So that morning, we were getting information on a possible aircraft that was not far from the Capitol. It was concerning in its behavior. We were relying a lot on information that we were getting, and we made a determination. So we have a series of levels of air security levels as, you know, a possible air threat begins to encroach on our area. We go up through a yellow, an orange, and then we get to a red. So red is where we evacuate the building. Orange is where we're kind of, you know, leaning forward. We're like, okay, usually orange will be a situation that lasts maybe a minute. It's where we determine we're either going to go up to red, we're going to evacuate, so we're going to start closing doors, we're going to start closing some roadways into the Capitol complex, or we're going to go back down to yellow because the information is just not there to support moving up and in concern for the threat. In this case, the anomaly, it turned out to be a radar anomaly that we just couldn't get a clear answer on. So it just kind of hovered in that, orange zone for longer than we wanted, right between 23, 26 minutes. And during that time, we're at fault. We want to keep our congressional community aware of what's going on. We should have notified people. We're closing doors. Some of these roadways, you're going to notice some changes on your daily routine. But not expecting it to last that long and knowing it was a very dynamic environment up in the command center making these decisions, it's something that at the time, we didn't take the necessary steps to notify the congressional community of what they were facing, that they were going to be facing some closed doors while we make this determination. Because we expected any minute we're either going to go to red or we're going to go back down to yellow. So we looked at this very closely. We've conducted a deep after action. Worked very closely with both the House and Senate Sergeant at Arms in developing a new process that if we do go to level orange in the future, we have automatic notifications, messaging that'll now go out to our congressional community, much like the messaging you see already on your phones, on your computers, things like that. That'll begin to notify the workforce of door closures they may face, road closures they may face, and give them a little bit of information on what we're working, that we're currently evaluating an air threat, and this is what's going on. Hopefully we don't face a aircon orange for that long again. I think we've addressed that as well, but I think we're in a good spot to address it if we are faced with this again, to make sure that the proper communication gets out to the congressional community.
Appreciate that very much.
I know you're new, Chief, but that seems mind-boggling to me that we wouldn't have something in place that we wouldn't be alerted here.
We've got correct. We've got alerts for everything you could imagine. Again, it was never anticipated that an orange would last more than a minute. You get into orange, this is where we're leaning forward, we're getting the message ready to evacuate the Capitol complex. And last thing we wanted to send a message, get ready to send a message that says, hey, we're closing doors, and then 10 seconds later, we're evacuating. It was always in place that this is where we're gonna lean forward, shut doors, so we're not bringing more people into the building to evacuate, close some of the roads, we're not bringing more people on Capitol Hill that we gotta deal with getting people through to evacuate, and get that message ready to evacuate the Capitol complex. Now, if we're faced with something where we're looking at extended orange, we're ready to notify. But I agree with you. It's something that, it's lessons learned, something that we never anticipated, but now I think we're well suited to address it in the future.
What kind of plane was it?
It was a radar anomaly. It was no plane.
There was none.
No, ultimately it comes down to just
It was nothing?
It was nothing.
It wasn't a drone, it wasn't anything?
It was nothing. Yep.
Huh.
It was a radar anomaly, which wasn't even in the area.
But you can't ignore that.
You can't. And that's just it. At the time, there was very specific information that we were working off, and it didn't give us the opportunity to just ignore it and then right away say, this just isn't right. It's one of those things where, as a police officer, you have the sixth sense that you this is just odd. We're sending people down there, no one's seeing it, but it's in this area. But we gotta rely on the experts that are out there, and that's what we did. But, everybody, like I said, everybody from, all our support to us have conducted after actions on this, so hopefully we don't face this again in the future.
How does that happen? Like, I know it's an anomaly, right? So it's not something that happens all the time, but like the radar was broke? I mean, what was?
It's just how, and I'm not an expert on radar, but it was
And I guess the question is, what have we done that
Yeah, we
make
work
sure
closely
this doesn't
with
happen again?
who we rely on for the radar feeds. It's just how it's read and how it's evaluated. So it's something that showed up, but it actually was an anomaly that wasn't in the area where they thought
It
it was.
wasn't some kind of cyber issue?
No, it wasn't a cyber issue. It wasn't anything like that. So I think it's been addressed from that aspect, but we're in place.
Is there a way for us to learn more about that?
We can see about providing something, outside of a public briefing.
I would be interested in seeing that, just to
Yeah, we
learn more about it.
just to avoid that kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
If it's an equipment malfunction, or maybe it was just a big goose or something, who knows? But
Yeah, it's
we
yeah.
need to find
Nobody
out.
with a concealed carry around is like,
Yeah,
take care of it.
right.
Oh, no, Don Young's around.
Don Young,
But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
and appreciate
yeah.
it, Chief.
Thank you. So a couple things. One, obviously, we're in a really tight situation here. The budget cap's only increasing by $2.5 billion for all non-defense agencies. What is the contingency plan for you all, should we not be able to meet your full request?
So what's important to realize is we realize that going in and putting this budget together, that it is going to be, 2021 is going to be a tight year. We weren't asking for any additional mission. We're not asking for going above and beyond our authorized FTE. The big issue we're facing is we're being faced with a number of mandated costs that weren't anticipated previously. And it comes out to approximately $32 million in additional.
First, it's
Yeah.
retirement.
It's everything from the upcoming COLA, if you add the COLA for 2020 plus the anticipated COLA for 2021, that marks to about $19 million. Like I said, the OPM retirement, the FERS rates, that's another $8 million. And then the wage within grade increases, that's another $5 million. So that adds up to a significant increase in that. In general expenses, we're looking at significant expenditures, mainly on life cycle replacement, a lot of physical security life cycle, and a lot of IT and infrastructure life cycle replacement. So your question, going back to your question, if we're flatlined back to 2020 costs, we'd be looking at probably significantly cutting back on hiring. We'd probably have to freeze all civilian and sworn hiring. Attrition, we'd be faced with not having to be able to replace attrition. And right now, we're attriting about 104 sworn and probably about 25 civilian on an annual basis. So we'd be looking at significant impact from that, as well as not being able to do the life cycle replacement on the physical, but also on infrastructure. And with cybersecurity being the concern that it is, it raises concern of failure.
What's the biggest chunk of the life cycle?
Biggest chunk of the life cycle is probably going to be some of the physical security equipment that we have around the campus. That's about $7 million. Yeah, a little over $7 million. It wouldn't be barriers. It would be probably some of our other physical security equipment around the campus.
Metal detectors, that kind of thing?
Yeah, metal detectors, trace detectors, things like that.
Cars and...
Cars is part of that. OFL, our fleet services, accounts for a number of some of our costs as well. So we wouldn't be getting new cars. Leasing, we do a lot of vehicle leases, especially out in the districts. That would be impacted for it as well. There's certain things that we can't impact the upcoming inauguration. That's going to be, here we're going to have to absorb that. So we're going to have to find efficiencies to absorb the things that we can't do without. So when, additional expenses that we have, we'll have to find resources to cover those internally. But it'd have a significant impact on our operations. And again, we're not asking for anything additional above and beyond. We're not looking to expand into other initiatives or increase above our authorized FTE. We're just trying to maintain our current status.
If you had a number of people retire, you say you hire about 104?
Yeah, we have 104
a year
retire or leave.
What, if you were flatlined, how many of those would you be able to replace?
If we're flatline, zero.
None.
Yeah, we would be at a zero hiring for attrition and zero hiring for, right now, we're about 40 below what we'd hire just in addition to attrition to get us up to our authorized FTE. So we'd be looking at about 144 total sworn that we would not be hiring.
We talked a little bit when you came to the office about the child care and the survey, and can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to do to try to figure out what to do and why this is a
Absolutely.
potential issue?
That again goes hand in hand with the value of parents being a good employer that looks out for and values the parents and the mothers. Having been around for 28 years in law enforcement, I have seen and experienced the shifts changes, the roll call, the holdovers, the late events, the callbacks, where you're running into issues with childcare. And childcare has been an issue that has shown up in surveys we've done previous. We've done employee surveys back to 2015 that's had a number of comments on what we can do about childcare issues. So right now, the problem that law enforcement faces is we look at our shift work. Our biggest shift here on Capitol Hill is a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. So that means your roll call at latest is 6:30. So when you look at that 6:30, most of the, if you look at the House, Senate, or library daycare, they're not even opening up till 7:30, 8 o'clock. That would be a significant change in what time they'd have to open to really accommodate any of our officers to take advantage of it. I know it'd be beneficial for them to be able to take advantage of it, but you also run into a problem if we were able to get over that hurdle. we're able, and graciously, they've allowed us right now to sign up for wait lists for a lot of the daycare centers. However, because of our positioning, we're rarely ever considered Tier 1. So most of the time, we stay on the wait list, and it's tough for our folks to ever get off that wait list. So really, the opportunities to take advantage of any of the childcare in the immediate area is pretty slim. So what we're doing right now is as part of our upcoming employee survey, is we're specifically asking very specific pointed questions about time, needs for childcare, tours, locations, things like that, to see what we can do to go back into our wellness, identify some of the resources. One of the programs that Mr. Braddock is making available through the Wellness Center is an app that will help employees identify help with childcare, help with elder care. We have a number of employees that are handling elder care as well. And then we can take the results from the survey, apply it to that, and see if there's other resources that we can identify for them.
Nice. It's a good segue into the wellness question that I have.
Okay.
About, if you could just talk a little bit about, what the plan is for wellness and the resiliency program. Talk a little bit about that, the organizational. I know there's a point person now.
Yep.
And also how these efforts work collaboratively with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center.
Okay. The wellness, again, having a couple of decades of policing, I work closely with the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Police Executive Research Forum. A day doesn't go by when I don't get a correspondence, their newsletter. Somewhere in their newsletter, they are referencing wellness, law enforcement wellness, first responder wellness. You go to the national conventions, and a large number of the seminars they're putting on has to do with officer wellness, because they're realizing the shift work, the midnight work, the stresses involved creates a lot of issues for the wellness. So we see that as a concern. So Mr. Braddock, working in conjunction with the CAO for the House, has worked to get us access into the House Wellness Center and developed a very good plan. For us, we've got 2 gyms here. If you go to most law enforcement agencies, it's all about physical fitness, physical capabilities, things like that. Mr. Braddock has developed a program that's really holistic in its approach. It looks at it from physical fitness, nutrition, mental, financial, mindfulness, stress, and develops that as a holistic approach, which is far more important than just the physical aspect. We've developed the Wellness and Resiliency Division, which is under the Chief Administrative Officer. There is a individual that is now running that, very well respected within the Capitol Police community. He's actually helped me develop a physical fitness and a nutrition plan, but he will be running the wellness department and helping develop some of these programs for everybody within the department. There's a number of programs. They're going to give them access to a variety of different apps they can use on their phone. That'll cover everything from physical well-being to emotional well-being, mindfulness, a number of different things. I don't know if you want to add. It's a very, very good, well-rounded approach.
Thank you, sir. One of the other things we've begun to do with our new sworn recruits is to invest in them beginning their planning efforts, specifically around finances. With the stressors that folks are under, we don't want our folks to get themselves into an area where they can't support the living that they've established for themselves. So we've begun to work in that area. We're also looking to bring in registered dietitians to work with our employees, so they're developing meal plans specific to their current health condition and where they want to go to, so that we're working that in tandem with the physical fitness piece. And then we'll be looking at our wellness coordinators going through some very specific mindfulness training. We do that with our recruits. We're teaching them how to do body scans so they can literally learn how to de-stress. And we're looking to expand that throughout the workforce as we can do that with resources.
Terrific. I just saw a friend of mine does the research, and she's doing a lot of work with the Pentagon now around mindfulness training, and she sent me 3 studies. 2 were on the military, the other was on firefighters, first responders. So I'll send that to you just so you have
Thank you.
A little backup. But I love the idea of the comprehensive, obviously, and working with the House Wellness Office that we were able to set up, I think, a year or 2 ago, because they're doing a very, very similar thing, very comprehensive around nutrition, and this committee is going to start really looking at how much of our budget, your budget, Library of Congress budget, all of this, what do the healthcare costs look like for people who work on Capitol Hill? And I sit in these meetings like, well, we don't have a whole lot of money, healthcare costs are going up. Well, we need to stop and ask, why are healthcare costs going up? I mean, when you see the approaches now of being able to reverse heart disease with this comprehensive approach, reverse type 2 diabetes, and you look at the costs of those on everyone's budget, you know, if we can free some money up and identify who needs the help without, you know, prying in everyone's healthcare issues, but if they voluntarily want to, you know, help get this support that they need, I mean, literally reversing type 2 diabetes, you know, getting off meds. And we've seen a lot of veterans who are on 12 or 13 different medications. They get in one of these, you know, mindfulness programs or alternative program, and they deal with this. They literally go down to 1 or 2 meds. So we're working on the vet side because it's the same thing. Look at the vets' healthcare costs since the 2 wars. And if we can have a real strategic approach with all of you, I think that could be a good model. I mean, some companies are really starting to focus on doing this for that reason. You know, I mean, they care about their employees, but they also care about saving lots of money on healthcare costs. So I appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. Anyone have anything else for the good of the order? Do any of you want to say anything? This is your moment in the sun.
Yeah, these are the 2 new assistant chiefs. Assistant Chief Yoganam Pittman has the protective and intelligence, and Chief Chad Thomas has the uniform operations. 2
Awesome.
great, outstanding
He was bragging
candidates.
about you in private too, so this is just not a public statement.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, even though we looked, did a national search to in-house candidates, we're the best
Wow.
chose.
Well, I think that speaks a lot to the force in general. Thank you for your leadership. Stay in touch, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much for your time.
Thank you. Committee is adjourned.